Hello and welcome to Tuneful Teaching. Today we'll be discussing classroom discussion. My name is Olivia Murray and I teach high school choir.
My name is Allie Hill and I teach middle school band.
My name is Emily Morris and I teach elementary music.
My name is Claire Figline and I teach middle school choir.
Classroom discussion is a powerful pedagogical tool that transforms students from passive listeners to active participants in a collaborative knowledge-building environment. Research actually indicates that students retain 70% more information through discussion than through traditional lectures alone. I know for me, I associate things with conversations I've had or experiences I've had or silly things people have said, and having these discussions definitely helps students create those experiences to connect with the topic.
I agree too. I also feel like it's not as boring. I feel if you're just being talked to, it can get boring and students can get very over it very quickly, but when we're all engaged in conversation, it's a lot more engaging and people can actually put their own input in. So I find it,
I think it makes students be independent thinkers and
Yes.
they can't rely on other people. It's good to challenge them and have them be solid in what they believe and be able to defend it. I think that's important.
Yes, great.
And beyond academic content, these discussions model essential civic engagement, help teachers gauge student understanding, and build skills that transfer across all subject areas. Consequently, the ability to manage discussions effectively is highly valued by school administrators.
Yes.
Facilitating these conversations does come with its challenges, including classroom inequity where few students may dominate. For example, some of my classes, I'll ask someone a question of what's this key? And I always have the same student answering.
Yes.
And so it's hard to kind of just be hey, you can't answer. Because I do want them to answer.
Yes.
But I also want to give everybody else a chance to make sure they know what I'm talking about. Yeah, this is especially hard for the introverted learners because they do know, but they don't want to share because that's very that's very scary.
Yeah.
And it's also hard to need to support people who may not speak English.
Yes. That's difficult. Yes.
And what would you do to counteract this? To let the introverted students get out of their shells a little bit.
I mean, maybe just have a way of putting stuff up on a whiteboard. That's what I do in my classroom. Be hey, everyone click your whiteboard of what the key is. And so everybody can put it up so I can kind of check and see. And then if someone doesn't get it right, we can all talk about it as a class and figure out how they got that response.
I like that.
Mm-hmm. And so to address some of these, teachers must intentionally build a classroom culture that prioritizes respectful disagreement. So this involves establishing norms where ideas rather than individuals are examined, using visual reminders and debriefing sessions to reinforce those norms. So you've got to make it normal to be wrong.
Yes.
And that's okay.
Yes, it's okay to be wrong.
How do you handle a student who is disrespectful when they disagree?
That is a great question because
It's hard.
it is hard.
Yeah.
Because some students really just want to be hey, you're wrong.
Yeah.
And that's not going to be helpful.
Balance that.
Yeah, I think it's very difficult, but I do think we just have to keep reminding our students that, hey, it's okay to be wrong. There's no, I guess in a discussion, there are no right or wrong answers. This is an open forum. We can all have our own opinions. I just think reinforcing that and making sure that is something you make clear at the beginning. Handling in the moment might be difficult, but if they're disrespectful, I just think maybe pull them aside and remind them again, we have got to be nice and understand that we all have different opinions and we have to work with that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And do y'all think that to counteract the whole introverted versus extroverted, would you put if you're having small groups, would you put more in more of the introverted kids together so they are all kind of forced to talk a little
absolutely.
bit more?
Yeah, that's a good idea.
And then put the extroverted kids together.
Then they can all dominate each other.
Right. Yes, exactly.
And what I've done in my classes, when I ask a question, I say, I'd like to hear from someone we haven't heard from today.
Yes.
Somebody
That's a good
do
one.
share with the class. Or thank you for raising your hand, but let's let one of your classmates share.
Yeah.
It's not a dismissive, you
No.
can't talk, it's just, let's hear from
Yeah,
other people.
redirection, yeah.
So in our classroom discussions, we need to be strategic with our facilitation techniques. To ensure that inclusive and productive dialogue occurs, we must employ a variety of research-backed strategies for these types of discussions. So to start, you might want to do a low barrier entry point discussion. This is an accessible prompt with a one-word answer. Thumbs up, thumbs down, a visual prompt. This helps reduce language barriers and provides processing time. So this might be your raise your hand for Cane's, raise your hand for Chick-fil-A. One of those. This is not challenging. This could build some controversy, but like a fun controversy. So you want to start very small to start introducing this. Next, we have anonymous contributions. You can use digital platforms, index cards, silent conversations, chart papers. This allows students to maybe share their opinion on a more sensitive topic, or students might be nervous what their classmates think of them. So doing these silent, private, anonymous contributions help students, identify with their own ideas and allow them to really think for themselves and not worry about what their classmates think. And then this also encourages everybody to participate, including our more introverted, drawn back kids. We have structured follow-ups. This expands conversations using toolkits of prompts that ask for elaboration, evidence from text, connections to previous concept, or different perspectives. So in my opinion, you want your kids really nailing the low barrier entry points, the anonymous contributions, and then bring in those structured follow-ups, challenge that higher thinking. Then once we've kind of succeeded in those, we graduate into student-led formats. This can be like a Socratic seminar, inside and outside the circle, 4 corners. This is really shifting the responsibility of facilitation to be on the students. You now, as the educator, are the overseer of conversations, and you let your students think for themselves. It's really important we don't think for our students. And then our last one is multimodal expression. This supports diverse learning styles, incorporates concepts like mapping, graphic organizers, and movement-based activities to help students visualize abstract ideas before discussing them. So these are those really challenging things to talk about, but you're giving them multiple outlets to try to understand.
Of course, yes, I like that. I know I wanted to talk about, you mentioned the student-led format. I think this reminds me of when in my high school choir, for when we do UIL and sight reading, and we practice our sight reading. And not even just sight reading either, this can go further, so learning music in general. I like to have my sections section up, and they will circle up, and they will view over the music and see what they personally think is important they want to bring out, and then I go to each section and be like, okay, altos, what did you see in your I guess scanning of the music, what you saw as important or what you think is important. I make sure people talk and they have their own input, and it allows everyone to look at the music and form their own opinion and thoughts, and it's good to hear. I also might learn something that I didn't notice, maybe, getting different eyes on the music, so I enjoy the student-led format a lot when it comes to teaching my high school students.
Absolutely.
I like that. We teach students, but students can teach us a lot.
Yes.
And they can teach each other.
For students that are not comfortable with discussion, an activity you can utilize is sketch notes. This is where you draw small sketches of the topic you are talking about on a piece of paper. It can be a big paper, a small piece of paper, but you can do it in groups, or you can do it individually as well. This fosters the the environment for discussion, and it can lead into discussion. And I think it's important to make sure each student is allowed to be heard, and this is a good way to let their creative side out. And to close with that, it's important to know that a successful discussion requires structured conclusion to synthesize learning and provide formative assessment. Some of these methods we talked about allow teachers to document student growth and determine the necessary next steps for instruction. Join us next time for helpful teaching tips to find your rhythm in the classroom. Bye-bye.